Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing audio. We're going live here shortly, folks. Testing 1, 2, 3. 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 What the heck is going on here, folks? Hey, how's everybody doing? My name's Aaron LeBeau. I'm a developer advocate at Couchbase, and this is my normal Monday mobile stream. Welcome everybody. Happy Monday. Happy Xcode 13.1 day. Now, one thing that's going weird is for some reason my camera is not showing up here. Not sure what the heck's going on here. I've told it to use the cam link, and it's not showing up. There it goes. Hey, look at that. Now we're up and running. All right, let's see here, folks. So it is Monday, like I said, and it is the normal day I use to do a little bit of mobile streaming. And one thing I've been wanting to work on again is a UIKit application. It's been a few years since I've done UIKit. I'm not going to lie to you. But I used to love doing it, and I'm going to do it on this stream, I think. So we're going to hang out, have some fun, build some stuff. So what am I working on? That's a good question. I'm working on a Swift-based UIKit application that shows inventory. On the last stream we did for mobile, kind of went over, I have a version of this app working in Jetpack Compose. And because of that, I would like to get it up and running in Swift, which would be kind of cool. In fact, I can even show that UI off real quick. Let me just, I have Android Studio opened up on another screen here, and I am starting an emulator real quick here, and we'll just start up and look at that app real quick. Today we're going to work, I'm going to work on and take a look at changing out the colors a little bit, get an authentication service up and running, and possibly even try to get the first list view working with a UI table view. UI table view is the way that we can list information quickly in UIKit. So let me just go ahead and log into this. Let's see here. I think it's demo1@example.com is the user that I'm using in here. And then, of course, my password is really secure. It's word password, because this is just a demo app. I'm going to click log in. We'll take a look here and see what's going on here. So you can see here we've got some cards. We're listing some data. We've got a little hamburger menu here that we can do. And we got different screens we can kind of integrate in with and stuff. We got a little pull-down menu here, and we can actually edit items by clicking here and clicking edit. So we've got all kinds of functionality in this Jetpack Compose version of this app that I'd like to get up and running in Swift. Now, one of the things I was fighting with a little bit is colors and figuring out the light versus dark mode, which is something that I'm relatively new to in UIKit, because last time I did UIKit, those didn't exist yet, because it's been a couple years, like I said, since I've done it. So did some research and found that those are done in asset catalogs, it's called, which is pretty cool. So let's take a look at our asset catalog here we got. We'll see if Swift is going to agree with us today. So you can see here I've got a couple different things, but one thing you could do is you can make background colors in asset catalog, which is really kind of cool. And so one thing I had did was I had defined this color here, which is custom, which if I go here, this is based on the system color picker, but you can kind of define it to be anything. The one thing I looked up was I looked up the color that I'm using in my Android application, found this is the wrong color. This is the color I want. So the first thing I'm going to do today is I'm going to actually go and fix that. I'm going to go change this color to more of this pattern that I have here. And so we have a couple different ways we could do that. We have something called a hex code, which is really just these 3 decimal numbers, these RGB, that stands for red, green, and blue, if you're new to colors. And it takes the hexadecimal value for each one of these. So EA is the number 234. 23 is the number 35, and then 28 is number 40 in hexadecimal. So that's the conversion. That's how those numbers work, by the way. The first time I learned that in colors, I was a little amazed. It's been years since then. This is back in the 90s when I did a lot of web stuff. Now, what you can do here is there is the ability to define custom colors. And I think what you have to do is go to custom colors here. See what we have, these extended RSGB rates. And so this is the ability to give it RGB colors, and the opacity is the last one. And so this is on a scale of 0 to 1, but you can see here we have the option of doing 8-bit hexadecimal, or we have the ability of doing hex, where we can just give it the hex code. So for example, if I wanted to give it the hexadecimal number, I can just go in here, CEA 2328, and now that's that red color. However, and that matches, you can see here, that matches my little screen grab that I did using a color picker to figure out that color. However, if I wanted to, I also could define that just using the 3 numbers that I know. And you can see here, those numbers match what my color picker said. So we know that, the hexadecimal converts over to these same numbers. Opacity is how transparent something is. And in colors, you can make it semi-opacite. And when you do that, you'll see that the color starts to change to be more of a pink because it's starting to blend out the color. You can see, well, if you get it completely out, then the color doesn't exist at all. But we're going to keep it full opacity for this. Now, one thing I also want to do, what we're fighting, which is really not what we want to do in this, is that the dark appearance, we're having problems getting the font working. And that's because I was being silly. Really what I want to do is for dark appearance, I want to use the same color. So I'm going to go in and make dark appearance the same exact color. And this time, we'll use the hexadecimal. Well, you use one for each, right? Why not? Why not show off how to do it both ways? And I've already forgotten that number. 1 second here. What was that number? That number was 234, 35, and 40. So let's try that. 234, 40, no, 34, 40? 35 and 40. You can see even at 35 and 46, they're pretty close color-wise. And there we go. So that's what we're going to make for our background color. And I think for our splash screen color, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to make it that red color because that's what we're going to come into in our login screen. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to say here the color is going to be, instead of floating point, that's 234, 35 and 40. Was that the right color? That doesn't seem right. Oh, that seems better. And we'll do the same thing here. We'll make it a custom color. And we'll also do the hexadecimal by 234, 35, and 40. And now our red is pretty much red. And we can check that out. We can test this and see how it works by, of course, launching our simulator. I like to use the smallest simulator humanly possible, not just because I'm streaming, but because it's a good way to test your UI. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the iPhone 12 mini. And usually if your UI looks pretty good on a small phone, it's probably going to look okay on a big phone. And so I usually will design in small and big and then just test on in between. Because usually if you do big and small, the in between should probably be okay. One bad thing to do is do all your development on a big phone, like a iPhone 12 Max or 13 Max, the biggest phone that you have, because really your UI may not even look right on a smaller phone. And these phones still are popular, especially the minis and the SEs. They're really popular because they're cheap. They're cheaper phones. And you don't want to design your software in a way that, or your app in a way that's going to not look great on those, because you're really cutting out one of your user bases. So I've got a mini simulator here starting, and we'll get the app and we'll take a look and see what it looks like. And hopefully we'll see that there's that red that we're looking for. And when we come logged in, I don't remember what system color we have it set to right now. So it does take a few seconds to come up. Although it should be loaded by now. Is it because the background color of the thing is the same? That's what's going on here? Nope, there it goes. Just took a second to come up. So that looks actually pretty good. As you can see here, we have white on this red background, and we have a login button. That looks pretty good. We can also test this by clicking the home button and going into our settings. And this is, I was talking about this last stream. If you want to check your light versus dark mode, there's an option in here under developer that switches to dark appearance. And now when I click the home button or double tap the home button and go back here, you notice I got the same thing, but I don't want that. I want the background here, the square, to be a darker gray instead, so that because it's dark mode. We don't want it to be white. That's light mode. So that's what we're going to work on next here. So let's go back to our storyboard file here, our main storyboard, and we'll check out this box right here, this view right here that says login container view. Now a reminder over here, this is our scene over in Xcode, and we can close certain things like the files right now. We don't need to view that. This will give us a little bit more screen real estate to play with. And the same thing over here, you can get rid of your selectors over here. However, we're going to want to change some colors and stuff, so I don't necessarily want to get rid of that. Now, what we'll notice here is that right now, this view's background color is set to white only. Now, there's a little plus sign by this, and usually that plus sign means that you can make variations of this. And that's the ability to kind of change it based on what you want. So what we really want to do, though, is we want to define one of these right here, these named colors. And if we define a main color, then we can change it versus like in dark mode. So to do that, we're going to bring our file view back up. So I closed it too quickly. I want to bring it back up. Oh, where is it now? View, and we want to show the project navigator. Now we got that back. I'm going to go back into our asset catalog here, and we're going to make a new color set. We'll make this login. Oops, no. Looks like I didn't do that. Login container. So login container, now we can say for any appearance, which is usually white, we're going to make this universal, and we're going to say that this is white. We can just leave it how it is, and that seems fine. For dark appearance, however, that's where we want to change it. We want to make it a gray color, not super gray, like System Gray 4, for example, and I think that's going to look pretty good. Let's go ahead and try this by going back to our main storyboard. Going into our login view here, we have our login container view, and now what we should be able to do is just say, let's go ahead and change this to be login container. Now in light mode, this should obviously be white, and in dark mode, it should be a gray color. And now we do have to do a little testing because we're going to want to see, let's see here. Yes, we want to replace inventory running on this current simulator. We'll want to see how it looks and how the text, when we type out the text, how does that look against that background? So you can see here now, we can read the text. That's a good sign. The placeholder text doesn't look very visible. As you can see here, it's messed with our eye a little bit. Of course, that login button, I'm not 100% fan of that that gray. Excuse me, the blue on gray. That doesn't look very great. In fact, we'd probably want to change it to be like white, maybe even. The one thing I don't like is I don't like the text background of the controls, and I think that's because we changed it by hand. And so if we look here, yeah, see, we changed the background color. And I think what we want to do here now is just use system defaults. We need to go back out of, so see here we have these backgrounds color. We're just going to select the defaults on these. Let's see what happens if we do that now. So we're going to go ahead and tell the text box, just be the default color of everything. And let's see what it looks like if we change it to default, including the label color. And then we'll even say the border color. Well, I do like the border color, that light gray. Let's get the border color of that, but let's take system for everything else. Now what we're going to do is we're only going to change the user box. We want to look at what it looks like comparatively. See, now that looks better. If we look there, with this, now in dark mode, that looks like you can read username better. This looks more like a dark mode kind of theme. And I think then the only other thing we have to do is we have to take a look at login buttons. So you can see here, don't fight dark mode, right? If that's what you're looking to do, instead get your colors working balance between those two concepts. I think that that's the proper way to handle this. And even in Android, I'm not sure if I can remember. Let's see here. I think I can go into this phone and go into settings and change it to dark mode. Let's see here, dark theme. If I go to say dark theme here, yes, I got it. So here's dark theme on my simulator. My app should dynamically change. So you can see here it changed, and we have still this red with this dark gray, and it still looks okay. I probably should have used a different color for this right here. This is means that one of these projects is overdue, and so that's kind of what that means. But you know, I probably should have changed that out. I can fix that later in Android. But basically, that's what we're looking to do here, and I think this looks better. And even if we go back, if we log out, you can see here I just made a flat color instead, but I do like this login box better. And I think these look pretty comparable. I think this is okay. So I think I just need to fix that text box. And then when we look at the login button, we can either, there's too much red on the screen, so I don't necessarily think we need a button like this. I think we can just change that color to be white. So we'll make a color on that also. And by doing that, I think that that's going to look okay. Good enough to get us into the point where we can start working on authentication code. So to fix this box, once again, the problem was that I was trying to play around with the colors, and we don't need to do that. And let's try to use as much as the defaults as we can. You're going to find out your life is way easier when you try to use the defaults when possible. So let's go into login button here, and what we should be able to see is that it also can define a text color. And let's go ahead and make a color for that in our asset catalog. So here in our asset catalog, we can just say a new color set. And we're going to call this login. Oh, boy, I don't know why. When it first makes it, and I try to type in, it does the whole thing, login button text color. We'll call it that. And for any appearance, which is anything but dark mode, we can go in and say, instead of this, we'll just say system link color right here. Okay. But for dark mode specifically, we're going to switch that to white. So we'll just go to really want the I don't want to use any of those that say that. Let's see. My fear is that if I set it to one of these system colors and it changes, that's probably not going to be what I'm looking for. So instead, let's just do I have system color white? System color pink, yellow, tailored label color, text color. I don't want text color because I want to be able to control this. All right, let's just go to RGB then, and we'll just make it this. And we should be able to make the little crayon. There we go, little crayon. We'll make it snow. And that's it. So we should be able to save that. And now that we've saved that, we should be able to get over our asset catalog, go back to our storyboard, because once again, we're using UIKit here. In our login button, we're just going to change that text color. So we're going to go here, see where it says text color default. We should be able to use this, not login container though. We want login text button color. And by doing that, that should be the magic behind it. So you can see here that most of UIKit, very similar to Swift UI, in the sense that the things, there it is, we have a white login button now. So now I can type in username and password. Login button doesn't do anything though. We should probably fix that, right? That makes sense. Well, in order to fix that, the real problem is that we need something that can handle authentication. That's an important thing. So we need to write something to do that. So we're going to go into here in our project, and in what the heck's going on here? 1 second. In Swift specifically, and honestly, Object-C has the same thing. We don't have interfaces like in other programming languages. We have something called a protocol. And what protocols do is they're all about contract-based programming. And so contracts means that we define something and then we implement it, but if we implement it generically, we can have multiple types of implementations. Now, why is that important? Well, if you're trying to do unit testing, for example, if I make an implementation that's mocked, or I don't, like, for example, in this authentication service, we can have two versions of this authentication service that I need. I can make one that takes in just a random username and password and calculates it based on just hard-coded users in the app. And that could be really great for unit testing stuff, but then I could have a separate implementation of that. That's the real thing that goes and talks to servers. Now, that local embedded version is really great for unit testing on a device that doesn't have internet, like a simulator, for example. And so having this protocol and then be able to swap these implementations out based on whether or not you're unit testing or you're doing the real app is pretty flexible. It's pretty awesome, to tell you the truth. And this is the cornerstone of like enterprise and high-level programming, is that, a lot of times we want to do these kind of things. So what I'm getting at is we need to make a protocol. Now I'm going to make a folder here. So I'm going to go to File, New, and we're going to say a new group, and we're going to call this Services. don't know what my Xcode is like. When I go to name something, it doesn't always do that right. I'm an alphabetical order person, so I like to have all my stuff in alphabetical order. This may anger some of you, but this is the way I like to think. And most IDEs do that. I don't know why Xcode doesn't. But we're going to actually go in and add a new file. And we're going to add in a Swift file. I'm going to see if they have. This is a Swift file. And we're going to call this Authentication. Authentication. That looks good. And we're going to say public protocol authentication. Now, in our contract for authentication, we basically just need a single method that authenticates somebody regardless of what they do. So in the Swift version, I'm literally going to borrow the code from Swift or from Kotlin, because that's how I wrote the original Android application. Let's take a look at how similar these are. If you look at this for a second, this looks pretty similar to Swift, to tell you the truth. It's enough different to drive you crazy, but it's pretty close. So in Kotlin, we have the word fun. In Swift, we have the word function. Over here, we have the option of what to return here. Use it instead of the colon. We use this is the return type. It's a Boolean. And I think that in here we want to call it bool. There we go. And we have a protocol. So what we can do now is we can define this generic thing called authentication. However, when we implement it, we can either implement it with a local or with some kind of server. For today, we're just going to work on the local version. So we're going to call that we're going to call it local authentication. So let's make another Swift file. Call it local authentication. And we're going to say this is a public class. Should it be a class or a struct? We'll say class local authentication. And we're going to implement the authentication protocol. So here we go. So it says right away Swift is, our Xcode is mad because we haven't implemented it yet. Now what it should do is it should give us the option to implement it, fix. And there it is. So now we have a implementation of it, and it says we need to return some code. So we can say var is error, or actually is authenticated, is we'll say is user authenticated. And we're going to say false by default. We're assumed that the username is always wrong. And then we'll return is user authenticated. This is one of my favorite things to do in the world. I'm not going to do a left statement on this because I am going to change it. It just doesn't know that yet. One of my favorite things in the world to do is to write a method like this and just move on. If you think about it right, I can always just put a to do and go back here and fix this later. Put implementation in. And if I'm working on something like a UI thing and I'm trying to figure out that UI thing, and I know I need this authentication service to get through that, a lot of times this is all I'll write. I'll write something that just does this, and I won't put any of the implementation in. I'll go back to my UI because that's what my brain's fixed on right now. Fixed on getting this UI thing done. Once I get the UI done and I test it and it runs this method and it always broke, then I'll go back and I'll fix it and put the actual implementation in. This is a really cool way of doing programming. And a lot of times, they're like in other IDEs, other languages, you can default a method to have like an exception that throws it just says it's not implemented yet. And by doing that, you basically continue programming. You just put your stubs in. That's what I like to call them, just stub methods in. You know, they're not fully functional yet. Go back and do the finish of your coding, and then you start running it, and then going back and going, oh, okay, here's all the stubs that I have to start putting implementations for. Now, for this, I'm going to need a local list of users, and I'm going to steal that local list of users from my Android application, not from Xcode or from Don't Save. I don't know why that opened up. I wanted to go back to here because I have a list of users already, and I want to make those users the same. So to do that, we're going to need a private. We're not going to change that at all, so we'll. Oh boy. All right, let's see here. So we're going to make a private val, private, if we can spell private right, val of users, and we're going to have this equal to. Now we don't have a user profile object, so that's going to be one of our first problems. We need some models. So let's go ahead and make a new folder for models. And we'll bring that down here. We're going to make a new model. Call this user profile. And we're going to say public struct user profile. Say val username. Make that a type string. We'll say val password. We'll make that a type string. We'll give it a val. What do they all have? They have a given name. We'll make that a type string. And then we'll also make a val of the surname. I don't think that looks right. That's better. A string. We'll need a team that they're on. I'll get into that a little bit later. And that's also a type of string. And then is active. And this is going to be a Boolean. We can do a init and basically just pass all these things in. From username, I'll type string. From password, I'll type string. We can probably just put these all in separate. Oh God, I forgot. So I'm in Xcode 12 right now because my Xcode 13 is not done installing. It's taken forever. And because of that, I do not have VI key bindings right now. So this is pretty painful for me because I'm a surname. I'm a big fan of the VI. Team, a string, and then let's put from in front of these. And if you're wondering where the from comes from, I was on a team at one time, and that's how we did constructors. Let's see here. And we should be able to say username equals from username. From password equals from password. Let's see here. Given name. Why is Swift being a jerk here? What? What do you mean, tuple? What are you talking about? Is it mad because these have to be here? These aren't function. Oh, it's not val. What is it? It's var here. Boy. Okay, the Kotlins are getting to me here. I was just looking at Kotlin code. Boy, that can make for some long days. When you program between Kotlin and Swift, for example, oh boy, it can be just terrible because they're so close in languages. But they're just enough different, as you can see there, where it's just driving you crazy. You're like, wait, what? No, I'm not stupid. Why did that not work? This is it's called context switching. And this is a big problem when you're on teams that use multiple languages or multiple technologies. It can really be frustrating as a developer. And I've been a tech lead for many years. run a mobile team for several years, and man, let me tell you, that always was frustrating for me, having to switch contacts all the time. So the reason for that is because we need to make a list of these users. 1 second here. I thought I saw a question in chat. Are we okay in chat? Looks like we're okay in chat. Thought I saw a question out of the corner of my eye, but not. So we can go back to this then. So we need a collection of these users, and so we can just say list of user profile. And let's see here. Actually, we'll just make it like that. Oh, and then we can say init. And our init function. Actually, I think we can make these is it left here? Nope. We'll make it. It'll tell us what to fix if we did it wrong. Let's see here. So we're gonna say users equals list of user profile, and then we should be able to give it just a list of users. And let's see here. Where is my list of users? What's it meant about? Oh wait, we might have to. Is this the syntax for Swift? Now I'm getting confused between the two languages again. I think you should be able to do username from profile from, yep, there we go. And we just need to get this working. So let's see here. I'm going to steal my users from my Swift app. That's what I was looking, or my Kotlin app. That's what I was looking to do. And once we have this, we can just cut paste these over and over again. So username is going to be a string. It's going to be that. And from password, it's going to be the word password. And given name is going to be, let's see, Steve. Jobs. Why not? We'll make Steve in team 1. And then we'll make him active be true. And let's see here. Why is it mad? No. Wait, what? Am I screwing this up? There is a list in here. I'm not stupid. Let's see here. Yeah. Ooh. Nope. What's the collection called? And I've got this in what you call it in Kotlin screwed up. So collection types, arrays. I want an array of type. Yeah, I did this wrong. It should be like this. There we go. Sorry, folks. Kotlin versus Swift. Remembering syntax between the two is always crazy. And then what we should be able to do is just this. Users equal there we go. What? Oh, do I have to use the word array, it looks like? Yeah. Equals array. Like I said, did too much of Kotlin programming last week and not enough of Swift program this week. Oh, it is bracket, not squiggly line. Oh boy, the differences between Swift and here. Let's see here. Instance member subscribe cannot be used in arrays. What is that? How about? This is right. This is the syntax of string. So users equal. Oh, don't need the word array after all. Boy, okay. Syntax, folks. It is like half the battle. Like I said, when you're doing multiple languages, not fun. Differences between Swift and Kotlin. All right, so here we go. Now we can just duplicate this a bunch more times. So this will be demo 1, and this will be, let's make this something different. Let's make this, John Smith. And they're also part of team 1. Just have to put a comma here. That will give us another element in our array. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to have demo 2. We'll make two more users, demo 3. And we'll go fix the names after. Oops. Forgot our commas. Commas. More commas. So that's demo 1, 2, 3. Make two more users. We'll make demo 4 and demo 5. That gives us 6 users in total, demo 5. We should have demo through demo 5. Perfect. So now we just have to go fix these names. So John, that's Jane. Jane Smith, John Smith, Jane Doe. Let's make. Don't like to use copyright names if I can help it, so don't want to use those either. We'll say Bob Smith, Bob Fisherman. Joan Arc, and we got Joan, Jane, Janet. Let's see here. Leo. No, just made that up. And so let's change our teams here. Well, we're going to make demo and demo 1 part of team 1. We'll make demo 2 and 3 part of team 2. We'll make demo these 4 and 5 part of demo 3. 3 and 3. So now what we can do is actually put the implementation of authentication in. Now Swift, if I remember like Kotlin, it has the map function. So you can just say map, and then you can get things out of there. So you should be able to do that. Pretty sure it has a very similar functionality. Can a Swift filter array? I don't remember the syntax. Okay, so there's a filter. Let's see here. So we should be able to do is say val user equals, and then we just say, let's see here, it's going to be users filter, and what we want to filter is 0 dot oh good lord. Once again, difference between Swift and Kotlin. Want to filter where username equals username, and I think that's the and for Swift if I remember right. $0 dot password equals password. And then now what we need to do is see whether or not, let's do it let on this. Let auth user. And so what we should be able to do now is, let's see here. No, I do want to use this. We're going to say if, actually we should be able to say guard let nope. Just say let. I know that like in they have the guard, which is very similar to the question mark in Kotlin to basically make sure it's not nullable. So then we can say if user auth dot is empty, then we can just basically say if not user empty, then is user authenticated equals true. And now we have the ability to say that. So what we're filtering out is the user. What we want to do is get one of these users back from this collection. The only way we're going to get the user back is if the username and password match. If they match, then we're going to say, yep, it's not empty. If it's not empty, because that's what this bang means, is not. If it's not empty, then we'll just say that the user is authenticated, that they worked. And we'll just return true instead. We'll start with that. We need to probably track that user, right? But we're just trying to get something up and running. So in fact, this is probably going to have to get modified. But in the world of just trying to get something up and running, we don't want to go too far. No, I forgot to go back to chat. Make sure we don't have any questions in chat. Let's see here. Chat's looking good. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and just make sure I didn't blow up the universe. Let's go ahead and build. Universe should still work, hopefully. And then we can start figuring out how do we wire this up. Okay, built. So now if we go into our login view controller here, we're going to have some stuff where we need to get login view controller has no idea where that data is, right? We need the username and password from the text box. And then we need to be able to run an authentication method. That's going to be our quick goal. And then we'll probably want to take a look at, like, after we have all this working, can we refactor that to use something like Combine, for example? So let's take a look here. Where is, that's our launch screen. That's the wrong one. Let's go into our main storyboard file. And here we go. This is our storyboard file. Now, what we should have to do is we have to wire this up. So in the old days, this has been a while, I would make two windows. I would keep this open over here, and this one, I would open up my code. There we go. So what we should be able to do, let's make this go away also. So let's hide this so we can see both of them side by side. We also can get rid of our inspector over here so we can see them better. So theoretically speaking, this is a login controller. Okay. And we need to make a pointer that any value in this text box we can get access to here. So what we used to be able to do is we just drag over here and we make something called an outlet. And we want to go through, and you want to keep it weak. We're going to call this username. A lot of times I do it like this, text field username. So I knew that it was a text field, for example. And then we'll need another IB outlet for password. And we're going to say text field password. Okay. And then we want to do the login button. But this is going to be an action instead. So there's something called an action. We could just say that when touch up inside happens, we want to call this login. A lot of times I'd like to put verbs around it, like do login. That way I know it's a function. That should be it. So we should be able to do this pretty quickly and just test it to see if it works. Now what we probably also want to do is throw up an error message if this doesn't work. But right now we'll just log it to the console and see what happens and move from there. All right. So we have three things going on here. Put our be action down here. We can get rid of our controller here, so we can close, let's see, so let's close this and just open up our view, navigators, and project, and we'll navigate over. Oh, I forgot, you can do it over here too. What am I thinking here? I have the tabs open. Let's see, where was login view controller? Here we go. We have tabs. We don't need this silly window open. What was I doing? Got my tabs open. All right, so what we should be able to do is, one, we'll have to make a version of that authenticator. So we can say var authenticator equal var authenticator authentication authenticator. And we'll just set them in here. It is of type authentication service. Okay. It's right there. What are you talking about? Import authentication services. Make it nullable. What do you mean you can't find it in scope? Oh boy. Navigator. View. Project. Oh, I just called it authentication, not authentication service. That's what's going on here. Probably don't need that import. There we go. Authentication. Now we can say equals local. Now we can just say and we can just pass in now. So we're going to authenticate the user. We're going to get a value back of that. We're going to say tf username.text, and we'll also do that for password. Val let results equal this. Saying this could be null. What's it about now? Optional value string must be unwrapped to type string. Really? Oh, let's say let guard let username equal tf username.text and or it's I want to say, if I remember right, password equals tf password dot text else return. Let's just do that for right now. Expected. And then what we should be able to do is just say, and let's also just typecast out this authentication service. We can just say auth equals authentication service. Now we should be able to just say, wait, what's the about now? Let username here, let password name, oh, yeah. Let auth equals this, else return, and now we can just say instead of authentication service and have to do all that null checking. This is how we do it in Swift, so we don't have to check all the nulls and make sure everything's working. A little bit different in Object-C, which is what I came from. Object-C for years, and then also did a lot of C# with Xamarin. So a little bit different of a syntax, and then Kotlin, we do this even different. There's after every variable name, there's a question mark. You hit question mark .let, and it'll typecast that over to a lambda that lets you do whatever you want in the lambda, which is, I think, a little bit, I like the syntax a little bit better, but we should be able to now do this without needing this. And so now we can just say this, and we can say username equals username, and then password equals password. And magic sauce, this should also work. What's it now about now here? Yeah. And then we can just say ns log is still a thing. So let's, I think that's the Swift equivalent of string interpolation. I don't remember if this has to be toString. Nope. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and try this out. And of course, we'll eventually want to map this like to an error message and then route it to another screen if it works. Bring up our simulator here. Start with the wrong password. We're going to type in 3. That's what happened. So user authentication is false, which means it was wrong. Let's try it with the proper user password. And now we have authentication true. It's that simple, folks. We went through and we got an authentication service up and running. So we can see here that the kind of just what we did was in our UI controller, we made one of these authentication services based on the authentication. We're going to do this guard here. This basically gets nulls out and stuff and makes it so that you can use the variables. Otherwise, you have to use the question mark, and it's just, that's not the proper syntax. Proper syntax is you should probably get all your variables out. Now, to make this more readable to code, we could probably easily just put this in like this so we can see each one of these. And then we're just returning right now. Eventually, we should probably not return. If one of these didn't work, we should probably throw an error on the screen that... or probably, boy, that'd be really tough, because if these don't work, that means this code is somehow broken, which is bad. It should not be broken. Probably return is fine here, now that I think about it. This is where we should probably change that code out. So let's take a look here. One, I do want to check my app store to see whether or not Xcode 13.1, done downloading, installed. Let's try it out. That's the whole point of the stream today. I was really excited to try it out. So let's see here. I'm in Xcode. I'm in the Xcode 12.1 right now. You can't see the version. There we go. Now you can see it. So I'm in 12.1, 12.5.1. I actually install both on my computer at all times. I usually keep 2 versions of Xcode running. People call me crazy, but it has saved my life when I have to ship code and I have a problem with one versus the other. So what I usually do is just name them what version they are. So let me make it so you can see this on the screen. So you can see here I have literally one called Xcode 12.5.1 and one called Xcode 13. And Xcode 13 should be the new one. Now the first time it's going to bounce, it's probably going to take a couple bounces, and it's probably going to be mad because it needs something called the command line tools. And usually you'll get prompted like, hey, you need to install the command line tools to make all this work. And yep, and there it is. Install additional components. We're going to know how to do that. I'm going to type in my password off screen here. And that usually goes pretty fast. It only takes a couple seconds and it'll install those components. Most of the time, this is usually either setting some properties. There's something called in the command line where you can set the Xcode, which version of Xcode you want to use. That's usually one thing it does. And the other thing usually is around, like I said, making sure that the command line tools are up and running. So we'll see here we are in Xcode 13.1 land. And let's reopen our inventory app and try this out and see if it works. I'm going to be really happy about this. And I'll explain why in a second. And we see here we got orange beach ball of death. But honestly, that's looking pretty fast, comparatively speaking, to the old one. Let's see here. Just make sure we have the full window where you can see it all on the stream. That's not too bad. Not too bad at all. There's a lot of differences in Xcode, by the way, folks. If you're asking why I like 13 so much, it's this Vim mode. I'm an old programmer. And for years I used Vim, and the Vim mode is pretty great. Now you can see here we're getting the little circles. These tell us that these are outlets. They came from the storyboard file, and they're kind of making those even bigger, the outlets, I think, in this next version, which is pretty cool. Let's go ahead and you can see here, of course, all the icons over here have changed. There's a lot of differences in the way that you select things. Like, for example, this is your build types, and you can see this is our branch. And over here is how we can select our simulators, where it used to be over here. So there's a little bit of difference now, you can see in between the two. We're going to switch it out, and instead of using an iPhone 12 simulator, we can now use an iPhone 13 simulator. So we're using the older. Let's go ahead and select the newer one and see if we can get a build working. Because we did change versions of Xcode now. We do want to go ahead and check that, see if we can get it working. And if we click here, we should be able to get the build output. That's interesting. That used to bring it up where this window would come up with the build output. That's not happening. You can see here's our iPhone 13 mini running iOS 15 instead of 14.5, which is what I've been testing on up till now. I am going to try to keep this compatible with iOS 14. There are only a couple devices I could think of that you'd probably still want to run this thing on, but they're out there, and some people won't upgrade to 15 because Apple, slowly took a couple of the devices out. I think most of them are in the minis, but I usually buy, I think I've talked about this before on other streams, but I usually buy super cheap phones. Let's see here, where's my camera? So this is an iPhone 7. Like literally a 7, and you can buy these pretty cheap still on eBay. And so these are great test devices if you're doing mobile development and you want to test on a physical device. You should be testing on a physical device before you ship anything. Never trust simulators or emulators in Android. So you can see here, this is a physical device that I'll definitely do testing on before. What is this? Finish. No, go away. So I usually test on a physical device, and you'll find the true speed of this. Like, this is pretty slow here, that first startup, but you'll get a real kind of feel for the setup and how long it takes for your app to boot up when you get on a physical device. Let's go ahead and put one of our demo users in at example.com, and let's put our password in, and log in, and we got authentication true. We're not really doing anything fancy here. So in order to do something fancy, we'd have to make another login or another screen to go to, right? And so we could do that, though. Let's make a new file. Actually, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to do it the way where Swift will write a lot of the stuff for me, and then I can move it around. How do I do that? How do you cheat, Aaron? Because learning how to cheat is a good thing. So let's see here. This is our main storyboard file. So let's go ahead and open up that. I think this will make that screen smaller. All right. Right now, that doesn't work anymore? Wait, what? Okay. Weird. Maybe I'm thinking of Sketch. I thought you used to be able to hit the space bar and bring the hand up and you can move around. Storyboard file. Looks like it's not doing that. So what we're going to do is we need to make a new view controller. So if we click the little plus sign here in Xcode, it gives us the ability to kind of select what we're looking for. So we can try just view controller. You'll see here's all the different types of view controllers that are available. There's several of them. And one of them you could just kind of drag out is a UI table view controller. Okay. And here we have a view controller now. using a table view controller versus embedding in a table view controller is up for massive debate. Should you just bring out the free one that Xcode has built in it, or should you just build a view controller and then add the table view to the view controller? Advantages and disadvantages to this. And when you're using storyboard files, it gets a little bit more complicated. At least in the last versions of Xcode I did storyboards with, and I do have to admit that that was Xcode 9, so we're talking a few years ago, you could not add custom cells inside of the main storyboard file. They had to be in a separate zip file, we called it. And then loading those cells in via here didn't always make a lot of sense. You weren't seeing what you really wanted to see. And so in that world, what we used to do is a lot of times we would just make a standard UI view controller and then bring the table view into it. And that made kind of logical sense. Now, if you're just trying to get something up dirty quickly, this is not necessarily a bad way to do it, but your prototype cell is going to be this cell right here that it's going to defaultly draw. It's going to be greatly limited in what you can do. And if you're just using the cells built in, there's 4 built-in cells to iOS, at least last time I did it. There's the regular text, there's a text with details, and then there's one that has an image on it, and there's one more I'm forgetting. But there's basically a couple different types of built-in cells, and when you can use those, massive performance. And because iOS is designed with performance around those cell types, and that's, once again, if you can use this, it's great. Otherwise, you do have to register the cell for reuse and all those kind of things. We'll get into that a little bit. But for right now, actually, let's do that then. Let's start with the most basic and see if we can add up to that. So one, I forgot that really the problem is going to be is we're going to want a navigation controller. We're going to need something that we can go back and forth between. So once we log in, the navigation controller can handle navigation between screens. It'll make the back, all that stuff work. So let's make a navigation controller. Start out with this will give us the ability to make back buttons and stuff. So there we go. Now we've got something a little bit better. So we've got a UI navigation controller, and then we have a root view controller. It looks like the root view out of the box is a table view controller. Okay. So in here, we want to first start out with on our navigation controller. We should be able to select this and set some properties on it. Let's minimize this now. See if we can get back to, nope, our navigation. Yeah, it should be over here. Let's close this out so we can see more of the screen. And our navigation controller. Here's our scene. So we should be able to grab navigation controller right here. So here in the whole thing about storyboards, it's all about being able to select which thing, like the navigation bar versus the navigation controller, because when we go look at the properties of it, you're going to get a lot of different things in the properties. So if you look here, we have a totally different set of options compared to the navigation bar, and it makes sense because we're selecting something totally different. So we look here in the properties of the navigation bar, we get totally different properties than if we were grabbing just the navigation controller. So in the navigation bar, for example, I can change things like the background color. And we can change that to be our main background color. And now that should have, we should be able to see that change. Title color, these are for the font, for the title, and you could just say you can do the large versus not. Now these are different styles of the view, how you want it to show up. So that's the large text attribute versus the non, and you can kind of go through here and set the font type, and then also set the boy, it's really slow. That does not feel great. To tell you the truth, in Xcode 13.1, like just calling this up, that seemed really slow, comparatively speaking. You can do a standard, of course, and then you get a bunch of options versus compact, which will make it thin. Standard, I believe now, is the fatter one, the bigger one where the title is right below the bar, which some people like, some people hate. We're going to leave it the default, to tell you the truth. But the one thing I'm trying to figure out is why I changed the bar tint. Do I also have to take the background? Yep, there we go. It's starting to look better, but now the other problem is that the text color is always going to want to be white. Shadow's fine. And this needs to be white too. There we go. Now, the status bar is a pain in the butt. The status bar, if I remember right, and it's been a hot minute since I've done this, but if I remember right, the status bar you have to set in your info plist, it's called. And the status bar, so boy, how to explain this? Let's go back and take a look at that, because this is going to be, honestly, I can remember out of all the things that was mostly painful that for new developers doing UIKit is this. The navigation bar is this bar right here, but it's not the top bar up here. This is the status bar, and that's where the battery life and the time is set on. And so they're a separate part of the screen, and that's what screws up developers a lot of times. They're trying to figure out why, when I changed this, it did not change. Now, in the old version, you had to set this in your something called the info plist. The info plist is actually generated from these properties. You have all these different properties going on for your application. So you have your project, this is your project layout, and this is your application layout, okay? And see the status bar color? You can see here in high status bar, require full screen. This right here, and you can set even custom properties. This is what you have to do in order to change it. You would have to say, I want to say that there was a tag that you put in, or a build setting you put in, that would change this. Now, I haven't done this in a few years, so I'm going to go just check real quick in Apple's documentation. Swift, iOS 14, change status bar background color. Is there an easy way to do this? Let's see here. You shouldn't have to do this in your view controller. I'm looking here to see. Boy, there's a lot of really bad answers on the internet. Oh boy. It used to be you could just set it in the the plist. I remember this for a fact. But now they're saying so it looks like this changed in iOS 13. So there's two options here. Boy. And it looks like it is a mess if it's that seems really weird. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. So a couple different things going on here. So this is an article that's explaining how to do it on the internet. It's saying that you have two different options here. That just doesn't seem right. Let's see here. Check and see if there's multiple websites that say the same thing, then that's usually a little bit more trustworthy. But and you shouldn't have to do this in your view controller, because you want to do this so it's for everywhere, not just one place, right? So they're saying now this makes more. Yeah, this is what I was talking about right here. In info plist, you could set up this. This is what I remember doing, is in the info plist going through and doing that. And I also kind of remember this now. I do remember doing the app delegate version. Change the following in the Swift delegate. So they're basically making an inheriting, where they're basically trying to inheriting and then override. That's what he's basically doing. I don't know if I like that really either. That seems like it's a big pain in the butt. Apple should have the documentation, the answer how to do this. And that's the real answer, what you should do anytime you can. Actually, let's go back. We want to go to documentation. UIKit. So we are in UIKit. We can go here. We should be able to do. Yeah, but I want to do. Let's just do the status bar. That's really interesting. Here we go. Setting the app's tint color. Oh, that's watch. Oh, you turd. That's exactly what I wanted, but I wanted it for. That's funny that it doesn't tell you. Yep, this is what we want. But how do we change it? That's all the stuff, Apple, that I do, but I want to change it. Oh. There's a lot of human guidelines on this, but really, I'm a little shocked that when we have it here, sending the app's tint color, but it's only for watch, it looks like, for WatchKit. Is it in the asset catalog? Let's check. Where's the asset catalog at? App icon, accent color. Okay, I didn't want to do that. Undo. Color. Let's do this, and we want decimal. Let's try 234. and 40. And that should give us a red. And let's just go back to our main storyboard file. So the question is then, do we pop to the navigation controller, navigation controller then pop to the first view that happens. So what we should be able to do is pull this from here as long as we have title on it. But I think the problem is going to be is whether or not the navigation controller is first or not. That's going to be the issue at hand. And then based on that, we'll have to figure out, like, you know, because in the old school way, there was something called the root view controller. And on the main window, you could just change the root view controller. So what I would do in the old school way of doing this is I would just say, hey, root, your new main view controller is this person over here, which is this navigation controller. You're probably asking, well, why would you want to do all these things? Well, think about it for a second. Login and authentication is a security boundary. You don't want anybody in your application and being able to screw around navigation unless they authenticate in. So, but if you put the navigation controller first, they may be able to figure a hackery way around telling the navigation controller to go to the next view without typing in the username and password right, especially if they're a hacker and they've got the phone rootkit and stuff. So one of the goals I used to always do from a security standpoint is trying to make it so that that's not physically possible. That literally that, you know, in order to bring up the navigation controller and do navigation, you have to be logged in first. And it's like almost like a security boundary. This screen right here is separate from everything else, and you're not going to be able to tap the navigation controller or anything else until you authenticate in. And that's why having the navigation controller separate was an old design pattern from a security standpoint. And it also made it easy because I didn't have to worry about like the back button. Because if you think about it, if this was a navigation controller and I went to one view to the next, it would build a back button to go backwards. And I want them going back to the login screen. And that's just not what's going to happen. If anything, I should, if they log out, if there's a menu option, they can log out and we make a UI split view and make it so that they have a navigation menu, and then they could do that. Technically speaking, in fact, that's what we should do. We shouldn't build a navigation controller. Now I think about it, we should use a UI split view. Because that way we're going to get the new, what's it called, not the hamburger, overflow menu. We'll get the overflow menu over on one side where we can list the options inside the application. That's actually a better idea because it'll work with tablet. So walking through this process, thinking through the design and thinking about it, I don't think navigation controllers makes the most sense here. I think the split view makes the most sense, and then the split view should have all that stuff embedded inside of it. And it will know, you know, which one to go to on the left and right based on that. The old way, I think it was called. I don't even want to say the old way because it's the terminology is not necessarily, it's frowned on the internet today. So we're not going to even talk about the terminology that they used to use for this. I don't think it's worth the conversation. But anyways, I believe this is actually the wrong way to do this, and the right way. It's still not going to fix our status bar color. But I believe the right way is something called a UI split view. Yeah. And now you're instantly going to say, oh boy, Aaron, you really, was this such a good idea? Because man, that looks way more complicated. Sort of. If we think about it for a hot second, what do we have here? We have a, this is the, boy, Apple doesn't make it easy to select these things and move them around anymore, do they? Can I move this? Can't I move this? I used to be able to move these things around a lot more. There, oh, there it is. Okay, you can. All right. This will be on tablet. The left, this one right here is the left side of the screen. Okay. Excuse me. This is the left side of the screen, and this is the right side of the screen. Hopefully that makes sense. And in what should happen in a split view controller, which is really cool, is if you're on a device that's compact, remember we talked about in last stream, we have these device sizes. If you're on a compact screen, instead of having a left and right side of the screen, it should fold down. And we should basically have the first thing show up, which is the left side of the screen, and then navigate to the right. That's how it should work. Now, in order to do this, though, we do need to name this so we can find it inside of our, I was going to say zip file, but it's not a zip file anymore. It's called a storyboard file now. And the way to do that is usually right here. We have to give it a storyboard ID. And when we give it a storyboard ID, it will automatically bring these things up. And we can even test this by just putting like a label in. So let's go here, label, put a label over here, call it hello world. Okay, and then over here we have a table view. This should work for just testing. And then our split view controller, we'll call this main view controller. And the storyboard ID, I like to make the same. Okay. That should, by theory, make a main view controller. And now what should be able to happen is, I think about the only other issue is, go back and select this. Can I go backwards? There we go. We don't want this to change because if we do that, we have to make a file for it. And that's going to go into a little chaos here. I'm going to try to just cheat by using a storyboard ID and get it out, that code. So what should happen is, can I now tell it to, let's see here real quick. UI view controller, change main view controller. Yep, so we should be able to say, I don't want this to happen. The only thing I'm worried about is the root. And we may have to do this in the scene delegate. You used to be able to do this in app delegate. And here there used to be a not this, that's C#. Self window dot root view controller. There it is. So that is the root of the application. So okay, we're not so far. This is still working like it used to work, and you could set the root view controller to something different if you wanted to, but you have a pointer to the main application to do that, and that was the whole trick to it. Is that you would have to basically make a pointer out so you can get to window, and from there used to be something called the UI application shared, I want to say, was the way to do it, and you could set it that way. But the thing you'd have to do though is you'd have to get a view controller pointer. So let's start with that. Let's try getting that and see if we can get this working. And then I think looking at the time here, I think that will probably be the end of this stream. So back over here, what we need to do is in this do login, if this works, if results are true, then let's start out by getting let storyboard. We need to get a pointer to the storyboard because that's where we need to instantiate our UI split view controller. And it's inside that storyboard file, technically speaking. So we can just go to storyboard and say UI storyboard. And now we have to give it a couple of different things. We have to give it the name of the storyboard file and the bundle. Now the bundle doesn't really exist anymore. I don't think that they use bundles, app bundles anymore. That's more of a app kit thing where you could make multiple. You could take a bunch of. Boy, how to explain this? Back in the old days, there used to be something called nibs, and then that turns into zibs. And bundles was the ability to take a bunch of those and put them together. And I don't think bundles are used that much anymore. From as far as I know, back in the old days, before there were storyboard files, there was something called a zib file, which just stood for XML interface builder files, and then the nib was the next step, interface builder files. And those were the old ways that we did it before storyboard files existed. Storyboard files are a little bit easier because you don't have to hunt down like all these XML files on your computer. On the flip side, merging a storyboard file change, if both people are working at the same time, it sucks. I don't recommend it. If you're still doing like iOS development using storyboard files, we used to like have like either in Slack or in chat somewhere, send everybody a message, hey, I'm about to use this, I'm going to check out the storyboard file to make a change. Nobody else touch it until I'm done. By doing that, the chances to have to do a merge on it was much less. It is ridiculously painful to do a merge on a storyboard file. Let me tell you, I do not recommend it for the faint of heart. Don't be a superhero on this, but it can happen. So what we want to do here is we want to instantiate the main view controller, which is our split view, right? So if we go back to our, just to remind everybody where we're at here, and remind myself, inside of here, we've made this new split view controller, and we gave it a storyboard ID right here. The storyboard ID is important. That's how you can grab the definition of this out of the storyboard file. And so what we're going to do now is go back to our login view controller, and we're going to say this is going to be our main view controller. It's going to equal, we have to tell the storyboard that we want to instantiate a view controller. And let's see, instantiate view controller should be what it's called. Instant view controller. Yes, with identifier. Then the identifier is that ID that I just took. That's that storyboard ID that you set inside there. Now, the thing that blows everybody's mind, and the first time they see this, they say, you're doing it wrong, Aaron. Where's the code file for that? It's serialization. Technically speaking, you don't need a view controller code file if you want to take the defaults. That is something really hard to have sink in when you're new to UIKit going, wait, what? You don't necessarily need a code file for that view controller? No, it's got a default implementation out of the box. And if you don't need to modify it at all, you don't have to instantiate it. That it's like UI navigation controller. Most of the time, you can just take the default implementation of a UI navigation controller, navigation view controller. You don't have to like build a custom one of those. And that was really kind of how UIKit was for a very long time. So now, there's two ways of doing this. So one, you could do a show on this, and that would show it. However, the problem, like I was describing earlier, is that this causes a new problem, is that you don't ever want to go back to the login screen unless you want to change the user. And so a lot of times, this is where I want to change the Windows root view controller. Now, there used to be something called, and I think it still exists, UI application self.shared, and there should be window on this, and then you can say this might be is it current? I think this is now an array, and so you have to go get the current one. Let's see here. That's the only thing I don't know how to get. We'll get the first one. We'll assume that that's it. Dot. And now you can say root view controller equals this main view controller. I know that sounds like that's super confusing, but follow with me for a second here. Why is that even needed? On an iPhone, technically speaking, not needed at all, because the iPhone only has one window usually available at any time. However, on the iPad, for example, we have multiple windows now. And on the Mac, if you're using Catalyst, for example, you can have many windows open in an application at the same time. So you have to tell it which window you want to do this for. I'm going to put this hack in for right now. Eventually, we'd have to probably calculate this out. But for right now, just to test my logic, I can do this, and this by theory should work and not crash. All by theory, of course. In the old days, before there was multi-window, you would just say UI application itself shared window dot root view controller equals this, and it would just change out the root view controller. And it was really kind of handy for, like I said, in this kind of situation where you want a login window, you want to gate the rest of the program and only go to it if the user types in the username and password right. So let's go demo at example.com, password. We know that that happens to be right. Click login and see what happens here. There it is. There is, technically speaking, our split view controller. We go back here. Here's our root controller. Now, of course, we are taking a default implementation. It has nothing. The default implementation can't do anything. We can't get back to the login screen. We can't do anything because we just said, take a default UI split view controller. That's a problem, right? However, it did work. We were able to route out advantages and disadvantages, right? And so this is where we're going to get into some more complicated kind of things here. We go back to our storyboard file. So kind of review, I know that that's super confusing to people. Like, how is that even, that almost seems like it's voodoo in some reasons, right? Because the fact it doesn't seem like it should work, but it does. And once again, you just have to get down to the fact that inside of UIKit, you don't necessarily have to bring in an implementation file unless you need to customize it. So, but a little bit was kind of disturbing though was the fact that I didn't get this, but I think the reason why is because this is not a custom view right now. So it's just taking the default view out of the box. And so my hello world message didn't come up because of that. What it should do on phone though is it should bring up this one first, to tell you the truth. And then you should get a navigate button to go to the other one. No, I take that back. That's wrong. It always assumes that this one happens in the first item was, and now I remember this, it doesn't. You have to tell it which one you want to have happen. There's a method you override to say which view controller comes first. I do remember this, and I remember that's the reason why I used to override the UI split view, so I could override that method. So let's see here. We want to do, in features, we're going to have, let's make a new feature called, let's see here, new group. We'll call this main navigation. M is after L in the alphabet. Let's add a new file, a Swift. And we want this thing to inherit from a regular UI view controller. Or not that. We want to inherit from a main split view controller. So we can say here, import UIKit. And from here we can say class, main split view controller. We want to inherit from UI split view controller. And I do believe we want to take in the delegate. UI split view controller delegate. Because we want the events on that. That's going to help us. Because I believe, if I remember right, one of the events that you tell it which view to come out is from the delegate. And that should give us the ability to choose which view comes in first. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we're going to have a feature called actually, we can keep this in here. We can say that we want a UI view controller. Yeah, UI view controller would probably be fine for this. New file. We're just going to call this navigation menu or overflow. Navigation menu. This is going to be of type public or class overflow navigation menu. This is of a UI view controller. Let's also call this Now that sounds like a lot of typing, but knowing that you are a view controller is always a good thing. So let's rename this file too. We're going to call this menu view controller. I know that name's longer, but it's cool. So that way we can keep track of it. And then we're going to have our main project view. That's going to be that. So we're going to go features here, though. I'm going to add a new group. It's going to be projects. And here we're going to have a new file. We're going to call this project. Darn it. So file. Next, projects view controller. This is going to import UIKit, and this is going to be of type class projects view controller. We're going to inherit from UI view controller. Now will be our projects listing. So our overflow menu, first screen, that magic sauce. And then what we should be able to do is on the split view controller, we'll have a left and right side basically of the screen, and you can kind of control what you want to have happen over on the left and right. Now usually you'll end up throwing a navigation controller over on the right side so you can go back and forth on that, and that's the pattern that we'll probably look at doing. But for right now, let's see if we can get this where we're using our custom classes, because that's going to make life a little bit easier. Let's see, looking at time, concerned about that at all times. No questions in the chat, but let's go ahead then and go back to our main view controller. Okay. So in split view controller now, we no longer want it to use, we want it to use our main split view controller that we just created. Okay. That's going to be the very first thing we do. The second thing we should probably do is make these so that they're the same name, which means we'll have to go back into our login view controller and change out the code right away before we forget to tell it to use this new ID instead. So let's go into login view controller where we're telling it to navigate. That's a good idea to do there. Close our asset out here. Let's get a couple of these closed out. Let's go back into our main. All right. I already created navigation controller. Never mind. So we are already in the goods where that's why the defaults are pretty cool inside of UIKit with storyboard files. It was smart enough to know that on the right side of a split view, we're going to want a navigation controller here, and then to bring up this very first view. So this first view, we're going to have it instead of be a UI table view, it's going to be of type projects view controller. Wait, what? Projects view controller. Projects view controller. That's right, but why? This inherits from a UI view controller, right? Yeah. Projects view controller, that's right. And go back here. It may be because of that. Let's try that. Maybe because of the fact that it started with a table view controller. Let's do this instead and see if it works. Let's see if the storyboard file now doesn't complain when we do that, which would be my guess because it is our type. There it is. That's the problem, because it was set to a table view when it created it via the template. It didn't want to convert it over to UI view controller. The only way to do that is I'd have to delete that and then recreate it by dragging a new view controller up and then hook the navigation controller over to it. That would be the fix for it. So our storyboard file is already getting a little bit complicated. As you can see here, we have a root, our login view controller, that then goes to main split view controller. Main split view controller has two options in here. We have the ability to go to our, what it's calling root, but really it's not root. This is our projects. And we can rename this. We should be able to rename this. Where is it? I should be able to rename that, the scene they call it. Over here. Rename just by, there we go. Projects. View controller. So that way I know that this is my projects, not my root view controller. Because that's really what it is. And so that way when I'm kind of viewing this, it's a little bit easier to figure out. So let's see here. This is our navigation controller. That's right. This is our main split view. And then over here, that's login. And then this view controller is our overflow menu. So we should be renaming this. Can I rename this? There we go. Overflow menu. There we go. Now when we're looking at this, this makes a little bit more sense to me. We have a login view controller scene. A scene could have multiple views in it because we have our multiple windows, because the fact that we have multi-window in this world. We have an overflow menu that's going to come up, or a project, and then the navigation controller is going to handle the right side, or all of it, technically speaking if you're on phone. And then the main split view controller is this kind of like orchestrator that's figuring out what's going on between these two. And that's where we have to kind of fix the delegate. So in the delegate, we want the first view, the overflow menu, to show up instead on phone only. On tablet, we want it to be normal. In fact, let me show you what this is all about. And I think the best way to show you this is by showing you on tablet. And so why are we doing all this work? Well, this work is to make the application work properly and look good on a tablet. And that's where a split view controller comes in and is pretty amazing. So I'm going to just use the iPad mini, not the iPhone, the iPad mini simulator. And I'm going to start up the new simulator with this app running. And I think it'll make a little bit more sense when we look at it from an iPad standpoint. When you look at it from a phone standpoint, it doesn't necessarily make sense. Now, of course, the iPad's pretty big, so I'm going to have to shrink this down so you can see it on the stream. So let me shrink down. Can we size this? There we go. There we go. That's how most people hold the iPad anyways. Let's let this thing boot up, and I'll show you what I mean by split view controller and how all this works and why you want it to work the way it does. It builds really great tablet experiences when you use UI split view controller, and you're pretty much getting that kind of layout out of the box. So you'll see here last stream we fixed this so that the login box should be in the center no matter what, and that is showing up pretty brilliant here. And that's a problem though. Like hiding it like that is really terrible. Let's see here. So this is demo at example.com. We may have to look at that. I don't know how many options we have on a small screen like this, but we should probably look at that. We'll click login. See what I mean over here, how we have this menu over here. This is the left side and this is the right side. So what happened was on tablet, now this is really interesting because this is not what I thought it was. This is the exact opposite of what I thought it was. This is the main view, and then this is the menu. It's actually backwards to what I thought it would be. This is, they used to call this like detail inside of the split view controller. And this used to be called master, which I don't like using that word anymore, so we're not going to use it. But we need to figure that out. So this is exact opposite of what I thought it would be. So this means that the storyboard file that we did here, where we said that this is actually detail. So we can actually change this out to be detail. Oh no, that does make sense actually, because the problem is that it assumes the first view is a root view control, is a table view, because it assumes you have a bunch of items you want to select over here, and then when you select them, it shows them. This is wrong, actually. So we don't want this. We want this to be a listing of screens, and we want this to be an actual table view. We want this to be like the mail program. If you look at the mail program for a second, I don't know if this is installed on here or not. I think I'd have to set up a mail account. But if you go look at mail on tablet, what you're going to find is you have a list of your mailboxes on the overflow menu. You select your mailbox, and then what ends up happening is you get your list of mail messages. And then from your list of mail messages, you get the actual details of the mail message that you can get. And that's the kind of like the 3-pin approach that they have. And that's what we're trying to kind of simulate here. We're going to want to say, yeah. So we just have to figure out how to do that in UIKit. But now we have a lot more information here. So one, I believe that this is no longer going to be, do we do this where, now I think about this, is this a double split view, if I remember right? Is it where you have a split view, and then inside the split view, the navigation menu is always the one, and then the other one is the another split view? I'm pretty sure if I remember right, this is how I did it the last time I did a complicated tablet app. I've done a couple of these tablet apps that are really, really complicated. Actually, I did a really, really complicated one back in 2017. Now, of course, that's almost 5 years ago now, but the concepts are pretty much the same. UIKit has not changed much in 5 years. It has, but it's the concepts are still there. And I think what ends up happening is that I believe this is what I want to do. What I'm believing is that what we'll end up doing is split view controller is going to have its left and right side. On the left side, or is going to be our overflow menu. And then on the right side is going to be another UI split view. UI split view is going to have, it's going to change its listing depending on what we select. And then also it's going to change its detail screen based on what we select. I'm trying to think if do we need a 3-tier approach to this, or is 2 enough? I think so. I think that's what we want to build. Now, of course, it's getting towards the end of the stream here, so we can we can Google this real quick here. We can just real quickly say UI split view. What we want to say is UIKit iPhone tablet 3-column example. And oh boy. Let's see. UIKit Swift. I don't even say that. Let's say 3-column example. This is not, yeah, let's do Swift UIKit split UI split view controller 3-column example. Yeah, see, this is where we go in. Here's triple column. This is what we're looking for. So style. So in style, oh, it's an iOS 14 and later only. Wow, I didn't know that. Huh. Well, we're going to make this iOS 14 and higher only, it looks like, because we definitely want that. We want triple column. So it looks like in iOS 14 and later, we have the option of the new triple split column. So let's go into here. So first thing we'll have to do before we end the stream here is we want to change the default iOS version. So we're going to say deployment. Well, we already say 14.5. I'm going to say that we're going to make it default that. And I think what we have to do then also, though, is we have to give it the minor version of iOS, the least amount of version, to tell what API is that we want to use here. 1 second here. That seems right. Build settings. Where is it in here? Here we go. So we're saying iOS target's 14, Mac OS X is 12, tvOS is 15, and watch is 8. That seems right. Okay. If you set it to 13, we won't be able to get that option, I believe. And I want to say that it's smart enough to know that and wouldn't give you the style for it. So if we go into here, US Split View Controller now, and we go into the style, triple column, there it is. There it is, triple column, just like that. Oh boy, now we're going to have some major trying to figure out each one of these. So we're going to have to keep each one of these straight in triple column mode. So I think that, boy, I'm going to have to do a little bit of research on here. So let's see what happens if we put another label out here. And say that we want a label. Third column. We're not really sure which column this is, but we want to try to figure that out. So let's do that, and let's do one more build and see if we can figure out which order of these is which. What we're going to want to do is have it default to the second. And then the second will be our project listing on the box. And then if they go to the overflow menu and they change it, we'll see in tab in a second here. Hopefully this will all start to make sense in a little bit here. So here's our simulator. Build. Oh, we got an error. Where's the error? Oh, because I switched it to minimum deployment target. So it says here, compiling for iOS 14, but minimum deployment target. Oh, let's go find that. It's somewhere in here. Otherwise it wouldn't complain. Here it is. So here's iOS 14. We're saying deployment info. We want to deploy to iOS 14. And the project, we're saying iOS 14. It's saying that it says it's 14.5, which that makes no sense to me. Let's just try it like this. So I just want to see this in the simulator real quick. And then we'll call it a day. Okay. So that's exactly what I thought. All right, so this is going to be our main view, and this is going to be our detail view, and then this will be our menu. All right, so that means that we need to kill root view controller and turn that into a regular view controller. This is also going to be the table view controller, and then this is going to be whatever they're viewing. Hopefully that makes sense to you. And that's how UI split view works. Is that, we'll have basically, this is going to be our menu. So for example, in our Android app, we have do I have the Android simulator still running here? I do. All right. Here's the inventory app running on it. Password wrong. This is going to be this first screen right here, this menu here, right? Okay, so that's where you see root view controller. We're going to have inventory demo, and we'll have a menu that you can look at. That's going to be there. Oop, let me log back in. This right here, this list of projects will be where it says third column. And when you click on a project, that will be over here in details. That's how we're going to make Tableau work. Then what we're going to do is we're going to make the assumption that if you're on phone, it's going to route to third column first. And the third column is going to have the project screen by default instead of one of these other screens. That's the magic sauce we're looking to do. We want this to work on both tablet and on phone like that. So it is, I think we're going to call it a day today here. We've been streaming for just about 2 hours. So that's what we're going to do on Wednesday. Wednesday, we're going to ship this thing up. We're going to go change those out and get this so that navigation works. And then we'll start building the ability to make items and talk to a database and stuff. We'll also get the status bar up there figured out. We want to get this so that the navigation controller and the status bar at the top are both red. So we'll get all that code figured out on Wednesday. I appreciate for you, those of you that are watching on either the stream or watching on VOD. So take care, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Oh, also on Wednesday, new MacBook Pro. I'm getting a new M1 Max. And so the stream, hopefully on Wednesday, will be on my brand new Mac laptop, which is pretty awesome. So